Oh, wow, well, you got a lot of people here. Oh, my goodness me. I cannot even begin to read through all of those names because there are far too many. So a big hello to everybody who is here. I hope that some of you can see and hear me okay. That's nice. Hello Robin and Susan and Ronnie Lynn. I can see in the chat. Emma, hello. Anne, hello. I guess Wendy must be here. Somebody's just said something to her. I see literally about 3 comments in the chat. Hi Mary, how are you? Hope you're well. Hope you've got lovely weather down there in the southwest. We've certainly got some lovely weather here today. It came a little cloudy earlier and I was a little bit concerned, but I think it's going to stay dry for us. Hello Trista, lovely to see you. Hello Claire, hello Wendy, hello Emily and Carol. Lovely to see everybody. Oh, it's lovely, good. Yeah, it's nice here as well. It's a little bit humid, not as much as yesterday. It was pretty humid yesterday, but hello Leslie. And it was, but today is pretty warm, pretty humid. Hello Neil. And yeah, I'm glad to be here for this tour today. Well, Leslie, you did say it was pretty stifling yesterday, I seem to recall, so it was a little bit down in Malvern yesterday, but today not quite so much. And it's freshened up a little bit over the last couple of hours. Robin, Sally Jane is very well, thank you. Thank you for asking. She's at home, as far as I know. She was at home when I left, so as far as I know, she was planning to stay there. She was working. She was writing, I think, when Claire, it sounds like you've got a little bit similar weather to us. It has been pretty breezy, but and we're sort of on top of a hill again, so I mean I live on top of a hill as well, so I'm kind of used to it. But it's definitely not as windy as yesterday. Yesterday our dustbin blew over. I had to go and rescue them, and the things were blowing around when I was down in Malvern as well. And we are delighted to be back here. Trista, sorry about that. You can watch the catch up. This evening I will update the Buy Me a Coffee page so that so it's showing the catch up. But you can go on there and enjoy the catch up if you wish to do so. Well, Robin, get you out all day, I don't know, off gallivanting and you're not coming on the tour. I don't know what the world's going to. Well, I hope you had a lovely day, whatever you were doing. Wendy, you are absolutely correct with that. It's not far at all from Birmingham Airport. I mean, it's not far from Birmingham, full stop, but certainly it's yeah, very close to the airport. Although strangely, I've not seen many planes. I see more planes going over when I'm at home in Birmingham than I have while I've been here. Maybe it's close, but perhaps they just don't. Perhaps it's a bit too close for them to be on the flight path. Ah, Leslie, you might be thinking of Coleford, or maybe Colesford. There's a couple of places with coal in the name in the Forest of Dean. But there's definitely a Coleshill there, and something else similar as well. I could do Forest of Dean would be a lovely tour. Walk around in the Hi Dawn, lovely to see you. Oh, so that doesn't sound good. Colford and Cinderford, that's right, that's the two that yeah. Hello Mitzi, nice to see you. Ooh. Considering I'm sitting on a brick wall, I'm quite comfortable actually. Where will you be, Wendy? In the Forest of Dean? Okay, oh, might be nice. August. Hello, husband John, watching on the TV. Yes, you do have to watch out for wild boar. Last time we were down there, we were walking along by a fence at the edge of the nature reserve, and suddenly we just heard this noise just on the other side of the fence, a couple of feet from us. This big wild boar just sort of stood up, was hidden behind a bush, and they are pretty big. And I was glad it was on the other side of the fence, because they are pretty big, and I think if they're disturbed or they feel threatened, they can be pretty aggressive. It's great to have them down there, though. To have some of these traditional animals back out in the wild. We can enjoy them. Claire, that's very, very true. Maybe exit pursued by a boar would be the end of the tour, me running away. But, well, Susan, I have got a hill, but I'm going to go down it during the tour, so that's one good thing. Hi Bev, lovely to see you. And oh yeah, I don't want to be interrupted by adverts. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. I don't keep saying that all the way through. Well, I'm going to be talking about some very famous products and brands on the tour today, so you might feel like it's a commercial break anyway. But hello Beatrice, lovely to see you. Hope you are well today, and hope the sun is shining. I can't even say it. Oh, I have a sneeze. And I got the car cleaned today, but it was particularly in need of it. It was in need of cleaning, and then last week I took a load of some plaster mouldings from around the ceiling that we took down, and I had to take those to the tip. And some of the plaster dust was in the back of the car, and I thought, no, I need to take this to the cleaning place. And so I went and had a nice lunch and a coffee, and when I got back, the car was looking great again. So I guess it is time to make a start. Yeah, that's me. If it rains, it's my own fault, isn't it? Yes. So welcome one and all to this tour, this community funded tour, and it's lovely to see you all here today. And a big thank you to everyone who contributed to funding this tour so that everybody can enjoy it. And I hope you're going to enjoy somewhere different that I've not done a tour before, and you've probably never even heard of, most of you, in the next hour or so. So where are we? Well, you might read the title of this tour and think, Coleshill, where's that? And, you know, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this place was called Coleshill, because it's named for the fact that the town is on a hill above the River Cole. So that is the derivation of the name, but the local people and people around the area in Birmingham and so on, they don't call it that. The way they pronounce it is Coleshill. Coleshill. I don't know why, but they do. And I know that for a long time, when I lived in Birmingham, I would see this sign for Coleshill, and I'd see buses and trains that were stopping there and things like that. And then I'd hear people talk about Coleshill, and I didn't even make the link in my mind that they were actually talking about the same place. Hi, Annette. Good to see you. But indeed, the people who were talking about Coleshill were indeed talking about Coleshill. And so that's what the local way of pronouncing this place's name is. What kind of a place is it? Well, it's a small town. It's got about 8,000 inhabitants. And it became pretty prosperous in the 18th century, because the main road that goes through the town, just behind me, the main road, was part of the main route that went up from London through the Midlands up to Chester, Liverpool and Holyhead. So for the port, for the boats to Ireland. So this was a major route up through this part of the country, and that meant that a lot of coaches were going along here, and it was an important coaching centre. There used to be over 20 coaching inns in the town, and that's why it became prosperous. We'll see a few of those coaching inns are still here as pubs and restaurants, and some of them we'll see the buildings where they were as well. But we're starting with something slightly different, a story of public service, of social welfare, and people doing something to help those less fortunate than themselves. This lovely and unusually shaped building, early 20th century building, is called Orchard Court, and it is the remaining part of a large complex that was built as an orphanage, and it was created, it was the brainchild of a man called Father George Vincent Hudson. He was a Roman Catholic priest at the Catholic Church, which is just up the road from here, and in the first few years of the 20th century he set up an orphanage here to initially help orphan children, obviously, of the area, but gradually they expanded and they started to help sort of needy families from the area, and also they got involved in wider care provision. So in World War I they housed families of Belgian refugees, and then they went back into being an orphanage and helping needy families. In the 1980s they had refugee families from Vietnam coming over here. Remember the Vietnamese boat people we used to hear about back then? I remember seeing that on the news when I was a kid. And but this charity that Father Hudson founded is still going. They still operate a care home here. They're still very involved with helping needy families and getting homeless people into accommodation, and it still exists here on this site, and this is where kind of their headquarters is, and we can see a little bit of its Catholic origins with this sculpture on the side here, and with the fruits reflecting the fact that this was Orchard Court. So we're going to head from here towards the centre of town, and Father Hudson, he was just one of several very generous philanthropists of the town. In his case, he was using sort of his position in the church to fundraise and to get into the social care side of things. Also, I think family wealth as well. Of course, being a Catholic priest, he had no children to leave his family wealth to, so he put it into this charitable organisation. And but there were other businessmen of the town who put some of their personal wealth into good works, as we'll see in a little while. So this is the main road. These days, you know, it's not such a major road as it was. There is a modern bypass road. So the main road these days that runs a lot through here, it runs outside the town. But, you know, this was once the main coaching route. And we're about 11 miles from the centre of Birmingham, I would say, and about 8 miles from the centre of Coventry. So we're in the county of Warwickshire, not too far from Coventry. And these days the town functions largely as a commuter town. They're very, very easy to get to both Birmingham and Coventry for work. Lots of buses, easy to drive, and railway station with a big parking facility on the edge of the town here. In the 1970s, there was a lot of reorganisation of local authority boundaries in the UK, and Coleshill narrowly, well, depending on, I suppose, who you ask, narrowly either missed out on or avoided being incorporated into Birmingham at that time. And they remained, they kind of were put into the more rural district of North Warwickshire instead, rather than being put under the auspices of the city of Birmingham. So we're working our way towards the town, and we're going to see the first pubs soon. There's a good place for a pub crawl because there are quite a lot of them, and you, even when you've had a couple of drinks, you'll still be able to find them all because they're all on the main road. I think of everything. So the Red Lion across the road there, a free house, that's cool. We always like them. But one of the giveaways of this being an older inn is the fact that you have those two doors next to one another, where once there'd have been a larger entranceway going back through the building to the rear, which is where the coaches and the horses could have gone through. Oh, they'll join us for happy hour. Let's see when we can. Oh, 4 PM to 7 PM, Monday to Thursday. Oh, well, we've missed happy hour. Missed it by nearly 24 hours. So, well, we're going to have a happy hour anyway, even without getting some cheap drinks. There you can see Coventry Road here. The clue is in the name. And here's another one of pubs and restaurants. But this one has a very interesting building incorporated into it. Look at this, 15th century timber framed cottage as part of the building. Bit of a lean. I'm not sure whether it's privately owned as a permanent residence or as a rental, like a holiday cottage. It looks exactly the kind of place that someone might rent for a shorter term. A dog looking out the window at us. Can you see him? Hello. And next we've got the inn sign there, the Coleshill, and you can see there the old stone bridge over the River Cole. That's where we are going to end our tour later and you can see the horse on the bridge there, just showing the origins of the town. And again, another central archway that has been filled in more recent times, quite lavishly decorated in this case actually. And this is a thriving restaurant and hotel business here in the town. Very nice. Let's have a look. Oh, not too much we can see from there, but it's you know, you can see it's a town that's kind of a working town, but you can see it had prosperity, because every now and then you get these large residences like this one that are from the 18th, possibly early 19th centuries, in very typical Georgian style, with those segmented windows and the very typical entranceway with the semicircular fanlight over the door. You know, this one is actually offices of a company that runs a big chain of pubs. So you've got kind of workshop, residential buildings, but you've also got the occasional Georgian ones. Here's another of the old coaching inns. Clues in the name, Coach Hotel. And we have a lovely scene on the pub sign as well of the people in the coach there, buying produce off the local people as they pass. And here an even larger one of these beautiful Georgian buildings, you know, very grand. So you can see that the town was generating wealth, and it's also a town that, you know, even then people who were starting to make money from the burgeoning industries in Birmingham and in Coventry started to be close enough that they could build themselves big houses here and travel when they needed to their businesses in the cities. Now here we've got another building that, despite having been plastered over, is timber framed. You can see probably by the slant of the building, particularly the kind of little dormer window coming out from the roof there. It's projecting at a very strange angle, and it gives itself away when you get to this section, and you can see the timber framing. You can see that it's not, as it looks, probably 200 years old. It is actually more like 300 to 400 years old, I would say, possibly even more. It's fantastic English oak from the nearby Forest of Arden, the wooded hills here in Warwickshire. So most of the local affairs these days in Coleshill are run by the District Council, North Warwickshire District. But there is a town council still managing very local affairs. And I have to say that Coleshill has one of the most, I think, most domestic of town halls of any place that I've ever seen. Because this is Coleshill Town Hall. It just looks like a big, maybe like a pub or like a club of some kind, or perhaps sort of the clubhouse of a nice golf club. But it is actually the town hall, and it was built in 1925, opened 1926. The opening was performed by a local member of Parliament called Sir Edward Iliff, who was from a family that owned lots of the local newspapers around here. The Birmingham Post, the Birmingham Mail, the Coventry Evening Telegraph, and was also a part owner of the national newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. And he opened the building officially, but it was financed by two local benefactors, a man called Albert Fifield, who was a local wholesale greengrocer. He made a lot of money out of fruit and vegetables and became a significant benefactor to the town, and a man by the name of John Sumner, who we will talk about in more detail in a couple of minutes. over the years this has been a courthouse for sort of small local magistrates court hearings. Nowadays it does still have the town council, but it also is private offices in part, and has various sort of community facilities. And in 2012 they sort of modernised an extension to it at the rear. It's now called the Coleshill Hub, and that has things like citizens' advice, a place where people can use computers for free, go on the internet if they need to do stuff and don't have a computer at home, maybe particularly older people or people who don't have a lot of money, and trade. They have things getting people into training schemes and employment schemes and these kind of things. So all sorts of community facilities here in the Coleshill Hub, which is part of that town hall. Now, it wouldn't be a tour of mine unless we had almshouses. We didn't have any almshouses yesterday in Malvern. There must be some. They're too rich in Malvern. No, there weren't any needy people who needed to live in this complex of almshouses on both sides of the road, built in 2 phases. So sets of almshouses, and you can see still lived in by people today. They were designed, and the trust that was set up to administer them. This is the kind of second set that were built. The first set is a set of almshouses that we see here opposite. These very distinctive chimneys. We see this very distinctive style of construction, this brickwork, Tudor Jacobean style brickwork, which is kind of what we often see in almshouses. You get a lot of these almshouses that people kind of endowed in the 16th and early 17th centuries. Here we see a lovely garden, and these almshouses were instituted for the accommodation of 12 local ladies of impeccable character but reduced circumstances. So I don't know, do any of you meet those, any of you ladies on the tour today meet those? Neil, yes, it is. Like you give alms to the poor, almshouses are basically houses that are paid for by a wealthy benefactor for needy folk of the town. So ladies in reduced circumstances. But despite looking like many of the almshouses we see from the 16th and 17th centuries, these were built in the 1930s. But everybody knew, you know, what almshouses traditionally look like. So they said, okay, we'll build it in this Tudor Jacobean style. But they were built 1930, this row, and the ones opposite, the additional 4 spaces, were built in 1934. And they were funded by a chap called John Sumner. And the road that they are on is named after him as well. He was also one of the big financiers of the town hall that we saw. Now, who was John Sumner? Well, he was a man from this town, and he, for many generations, his family had been merchants and grocers, and they owned a grocer's shop in the centre of Birmingham at the end of the 19th, coming into the 20th centuries. And he was they split the business really. His brother took on one side of it and he took on more of the grocery side. And of course, being a grocer here in England, one of his popular products was tea. And at that time, tea was something that customers would go in and they'd order by weight, and it would be scooped out and put on the scales, and then they'd have a bag and they'd put it in, and then it'd be sold that way. John Sumner came up with the idea of, well, wouldn't it be much more convenient if people could buy tea pre-weighed and pre-packaged. They'd just go in and get a box of it rather than having to have it weighed out and each time. And so he came upon this, and he was the first person to sell pre-weighed, pre-packaged tea in his shop in the centre of Birmingham. Now, he was looking for a brand name for this, and he thought, well, I don't want to call it Sumner's tea, because he said tea is of the Orient. So he said, I want something exotic, something Oriental sounding. And he came up with the word Ty-Phoo. And that was what he called his brand of tea. The first pre-packaged tea ever to be sold in England. And Ty-Phoo tea became one of our most famous brands. Still exists today. And it was because of John Sumner. And obviously it was a huge success. He became much wealthier than the family ever had been. And that's what enabled him to endow these almshouses and be a benefactor of the town hall and various other projects within the hometown here. He established a charity called the Coleshill Trust, and that's the trust that still runs these almshouses today. They're called the Coleshill Cottages, actually. That's what they're known as. So yeah, John Sumner and his pre-packaged tea in Birmingham. Pretty cool. One of our most famous brands. See, I told you, Bev, this would be like a commercial break even. Susan, yes, I think the gas light, that would have been a gas light. Not anymore, unlike the ones in Malvern yesterday. So let's go back onto the main road. Oh, no, actually, we don't go back onto the main road yet. Because I want to go just back and show you something that is just around the corner here. I wanted to tell you about John Sumner before I showed you the next thing we're going to look at, because it will make more sense if you kind of know about him already. So lovely office space here, but the central building of this, you can see got some new bits, but the central bit, this Georgian building there with the little portico, that central section used to be the vicarage. That's where the parish priest lived. Not bad, is it? They used to get the biggest houses in town, apart from the lords of the manor, really, the priests. But anyway, we're going to look at an artwork that was installed in 2018. It's created by an artist called Peter Walker, a sculptor, and it is called Memories Flow By. And here it is. And it is designed to represent various things about this town. Firstly, we have the cartwheel, of course. The coach and cartwheel, the trade and the passenger traffic that came through here that enabled this town to grow and thrive. And then we have an elephant. Why do we have an elephant balancing? Well, that is because of an incident that occurred in Coleshill in the early years of the 20th century. There was a travelling circus, and they were moving to the town, and they had been in a nearby town, and they walked some of the animals, like the elephants and the horses and things. They walked them along the river, a path alongside the river, through the fields, and they were walking them to Coleshill to set up the circus. And one of the elephants kind of had a little bit of a detour into the field, and he thought, oh, what's that? And he kind of dug up what was growing there. And what was growing there was a mangel wurzel, which is a word I never thought I'd say on a tour, but it's a great word. And mangel wurzels are kind of like turnips. They're mainly used as animal feed. But this elephant tried to kind of just swallow one, and unfortunately it wasn't able to do it. The elephant choked and sadly died from choking on this mangel wurzel that it picked up in the fields on the edge of the town. And the elephant was buried in Coleshill, and it is buried under the site of what is now a supermarket. And there has been a campaign to kind of excavate it and try to find the remains of this elephant, but it hasn't been done yet. But that's why the elephant is used. But look at the elephant as well. Look at his tail is a handle. Look at his trunk is a spout. He is representing a teapot. So he's also representing the links to tea, to Ty-Phoo tea here through Sumner's in business. So a really sad story with the elephant, but it's a really brilliant way of combining that local story, local trades, and the tea link as well, the teapot elephant. So I think that's pretty cool. The elephant, isn't that great? Memories flow by. Deliberate use of the word flow because the town sits on a hill above the River Cole. Flowing along the other side of the hill you have another river called the Blythe, and close to the town on the other side of the hill those two rivers join, and then they both join the River Tame, which is the largest sort of river in this area. So you know, the location at a crossing point on the river, very important for the establishment of the town, and really quite a deliberate choice of the word flow, in the sense that the town's existence is really because of its strategic position close to these rivers and the joining confluence of these different rivers. Now let's now we've got a number of modern buildings here, and the building that the business that I want to mention was in is no longer there. These modern buildings are now there instead. It was a company called County Chemical Company, later renamed Chemico, and Chemico later moved to Birmingham. They made lubricants, oils, greases, that kind of thing. But the owner of that company also invented something that you will be very familiar with in a completely different field, kind of, and that is something that you put on your hair. Brill cream, very famous men's hair product. Brill cream was invented here in Coleshill, even though they didn't start production of it until they had actually moved to Birmingham, because the main business was doing so well they didn't have the capacity or the time to actually pursue the invention as a commercial venture until later. A little dab will do you, absolutely. Brill cream invented right here. And they had, you know, it was a hugely popular brand, a famous brand. One thing I did discover though, when I went into this little local supermarket earlier, just to see whether they had them, they didn't have any Ty-Phoo tea, and they didn't have any Brill cream either. So not being very loyal to their local brands. So obviously something has to be under scaffolding on a door. It's the law, I think. And it's a shame, because this is one of the most beautiful of the Georgian houses. It's called Queen Anne House, private residence built originally in the early 18th century. And in the 19th century into the 20th, it was the home and surgery of a prominent family of local doctors, and later it was used as the town's library for a time, under redevelopment at the moment. All the Hartford menus Brill cream when I was little. Well, I read an interesting thing when I was reading the backstory to the invention of it here. In the war, there was one of their most popular advertising campaigns had a guy in a Royal Air Force uniform, and that became like the most iconic Brill cream advert at that time. And the ironic thing about it was that the model, the picture wasn't originally with a military hat on. They added that later after the war had broken out. They'd done the photo shoot before the war, and then they kind of doctored the photos to add this Royal Air Force hat to the picture to give it that wartime flavour. And the ironic thing was that the model concerned, by the time the advert was doing the rounds and being used to sell Brylcreem during the war to all the servicemen, he was actually in prison as a conscientious objector. So he'd refused to go and join the military in the war, but he was featured in one of the most famous military-based adverts. So there we go. Now, we've seen a few of the coaching inns. Most of them are buildings from the 18th century, maybe even a little bit later, but this is a building that's now partly an Indian restaurant, partly a shop, and this is a much older building. You can see the beautiful timber framing is quite well preserved. This is a building from the late 17th century. This is an inn that was built, one of the earliest ones, and one of the largest as well, and we can still see the beautifully preserved timber framing on the facade, and we can also see it in the passageway here where the coaches would have gone through. And I tell you what, that Indian food in that restaurant smells delicious, let me tell you. Oh, it certainly does. So we are going to turn off the main street now and head up towards the church, where we might also get a little glimpse of the countryside. Oh, I know, a proper hardware store. Look at this. Hawthorne's Hardware. Quite a... Oh, it's more like it. That's a place to go to get your things that they've stopped making. They'll probably still have some in stock, won't they? Some kind of you know, electrical piece that they don't make anymore. You can get old-fashioned fuses and things. So we're going to take the pathway up here towards St Peter and St Paul's Church, with the pennant site, I'm guessing, still here from recent St George's Day celebrations. Ah, Neil, you're being fooled here, because it's Wendy's comments, but the people know that Wendy's comments don't appear under the name Wendy. She's a spy. Shh, don't tell anybody. Now, the church is at the highest point of the hill here, and obviously was the focal point of the community. There was a church here over 1,000 years ago, and around the church the settlement grew up, and the church was quite important locally. Here's our sort of first view of it over the trees. We'll get a closer view in a minute, but we'll see the church was quite an important one locally, and the whole manor here was a royal manor, so it was owned not by a local landowner. It was actually owned and in the control of the monarch, and in the 11th century that particular monarch was Edward the Confessor, and there are records that show that Edward the Confessor held the manor here. It was a royal manor, and in the Domesday survey of 1086, the Domesday book, the manor here is recorded as being a possession of the new King of England, William the Conqueror, William I, and then he eventually gave those privileges to some of his loyal retainers. Now, the area in front of us is a sort of a little park and grassland area for local people to use. It's called the Croft, but on there's a charter in the archives from the 13th century that calls this particular spot Castle Hill. Well, actually in Latin it calls it Castle Hill. But, well, we look around, there's no castle here. They have done some scans, radar scans here, and they have found evidence of construction work under the ground here. So it is possible that there was a small castle, but not a huge, significant one, and it fell out of use quite quickly. But because this was a royal possession, and because of the strategic location above the crossing point on the river and the confluence of the local rivers, it's kind of logical that there would have been some kind of castle here to defend it in the early years after the Normans had come over here and conquered England. But it was not an area where a castle was subsequently needed once they'd subdued that initial resistance. So it's just a lovely open space for the local people with views out over the Warwickshire countryside. So let's go and take a little look at St. Peter and St. Paul Church, shall we? It's got a 52-metre high spire. It's actually one of the most impressive in the area. It's and because it's a hilltop church, it is visible from miles around. It's a really distinctive landmark, and the tower dates back to the 15th century. The church was rebuilt in the 14th and 15th centuries. New lords of the manor were in place, and they wanted to kind of leave their mark. And there are parts of this church that are older, the structure and some of the things inside. The font, for example, is a 12th century Norman stone font, and there are some tombs in there of medieval knights from the 13th, 14th centuries, local knights and lords of the manor and things like that. So it is a lovely church, and it was, as I said, a royal possession, so that's why it's kind of so impressive. It was always well funded in that medieval period, because it had these very prestigious links. And it is a beautiful parish church for the town. I mean, it's another one where, you know, you think of the size of the town and the size of the parish church, and you think, wow, it's out of all proportion. It's out of all proportion to the size of the town. The clock, I believe, is Victorian. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's Victorian or possibly Georgian. But yes, certainly nowhere near as old as the main body of the church. It is a lovely church. A nice silhouette against the setting sun. And I'm hoping it don't block out my signal. No, I don't think it has. And as the church was, you know, the most prestigious spot, the original medieval manor house was not directly adjacent to the church. It was some distance away, and it is no longer, there's no longer any trace of that. But as the town became prosperous, this was the area where some of the most important and impressive residences and other buildings were constructed. And the building we see here is the town's original grammar school. So it was originally built, it was much smaller. It was built in the 18th century. The church was involved in the opening of a school here, and the original schoolhouse was just sort of the lower floor, the lowest floor, the ground floor of this main building. But then it was added to later in the 18th century, and in the 19th century it was extended to be a much larger complex. No longer a school, it's I think it's offices these days. But a very impressive Georgian and Victorian school building. But I said the most upmarket houses while they were here, next to the church, prime position, and a couple of them remain here. Isn't this an amazing building? Old Bank House, and the plaque on it tells us that it's a beautiful 18th century building, but in the early 60s it was up for, well, demolition, or at least heavy modernisation, and it was saved by a campaign by the local civic society, and they attracted the funding to preserve the house and get it conservation status. So what a beautiful building it is. Looks like a hotel, I think. I don't know whether it has been at some stage, but that's what it looks like to me. And next to it is another pure Georgian house, or possibly an assembly room, because it's very grand. I think that might well have been more of a public building, an assembly room, and where people could go, and there would have been lectures and concerts and events, and that's what that building looks like. Now here's the Coleshill War Memorial with the lovely sculptures of the soldiers on it. They are by the stonemasons in Lichfield, and the name has gone clean out of my head, but they were they made a lot of these sort of figures of military personnel from the First World War for war memorials. That was what they specialised in, particularly around this area. The names of those lost in both world wars on there. But then you also have the additional First World War memorial here, which was created as part of the more recent commemorations of 100 years, 14 to 18 war, World War One. So you've got the little memorial garden bit, but what you've also got is some of the families of the veterans. They've donated some of the insignia, some of the medals, the campaign medals that they won in the First World War, which is absolutely fantastic, and I just hope that no unscrupulous people try to make off with them at any stage. Now this little street now, it's mainly used for parking, and there's also a public car park, but this was the market square of the town. So it wasn't a market town from way back. It received its royal charter, its royal market charter, back in the year 1207 from King John. In the same in that year, he granted market charters to a number of different towns and cities. One of them was Great Yarmouth, a large town down in Norfolk that you might have heard of, known as a holiday resort. But probably the most significant market charter he granted in that year was to the town of Liverpool, now the city of Liverpool. But he also granted the market charter to some smaller places, among them Coleshill, and so this is where the market was. They don't have a regular market anymore here, but this is where the outdoor market would have been. And from the 17th century there was a little market hall in the centre of the market square, which was used to keep some of the products undercover. That was demolished in the early Victorian age, and they built a new market hall for the people of the town. And here it is. It's this brick built building here, so you can see the archways that are now windows and doors. They would have been open, so you went into the market hall. Then upstairs was a room for public events, concerts, dances, lectures, those kinds of things. It was a meeting hall, community hall and market hall. These days it continues as a community hall. Has a little cafe in it as well, but outside it is something that I want to show you, because one of the things you often found in marketplaces in historic towns was it was the place where justice was meted out. In the days when we had physical forms of punishment for things. And we have here something that is pretty unique. So, in various towns we might see old stocks that people had to sit in with their feet through the holes. We might see a pillory where they have to stand with their head and their arms through the holes. Here we have something very unique, because in the middle of the market square stood what has been preserved here. And this is amazing, because this is not at ground level. So when people were put in the pillory, they would be standing on this platform with their head and their arms through those holes, so everybody would be able to see them. They could be publicly ridiculed, and people would see that justice had been done. Normally they'd just be at ground level, but this with the platform, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? That they'd stand on this platform here and had their hands through the hole. And down at the base, you've got these system of shackles where you could attach people to with a chain, or whatever they were, the manacles or whatever they'd been used on them when they were imprisoned. And that was the town whipping post. So if they were sentenced to a certain number of lashes, that's where they'd attach them to make sure they couldn't get away, and they would publicly flog them in the marketplace. And that stood in the centre of the marketplace, next to that original market hall. When that was demolished, they moved this a little bit and then and it's been left on public display. It was last used in 1863. Now, what kind of things would people be in the pillory for? Well, it could be things like causing a public nuisance, drunkenness, disorderly behaviour, and any traders in the market who were selling short measures. They were cheating the customers, so they would also be given these kinds of very public, humiliating punishments. And so 1863, it was last used for a pair of chaps, the pillory. They weren't flogged, they were in the pillory. They were a pair of drunken felons who were causing a bit of a kerfuffle during the market day, and the next market day they were in the pillory for everyone to see. So this is an incredible survival. There's not one like this anywhere else that I know of, certainly, and I've never come across a sort of a complete public punishment facility like that one, with all of these things built in. Amazing. Always find the strange things. Now we're going to go downhill, which after yesterday going up and down those bits in Malvern is a great relief. Here on the corner, an old bank that's been converted into a fish and chip shop that smells very nice. But I thought what we do to finish is walk down to the bottom of the high street, and then we will actually see the River Cole and the bridge that is partly responsible for this town being where it is. I guess if you come to Coleshill, you have the hill, you have to see the Cole as well. And as we go down, we're seeing more of these Georgian buildings. Another coaching inn here on the left hand side, now converted into offices, apartments, maybe a combination of both. Really high quality Georgian workmanship. But you can see the big, would have been the Angel Inn. It's called Angel Mews, the apartment block that's in there now. The Angel Inn. And that would have been another one of these big coaching inns with the large central archway. Now the pub on the corner here, called the Green Man, that was a sort of a interchange point for different kinds of transportation. Most of the coaching inns serving the long distance services that are passing through the Midlands, going London to the northwest or vice versa. But the Green Man was kind of an interchange point where local people could pick up a lift on local carts and coaches to get to other towns and villages. to the markets or for any whatever purpose they needed, and that was kind of the interchange point for the local transportation, right here on the junction of the main roads at the corner here, so right at the centre of the hill here. So you know, you really sort of see the you've got Church Hill behind us, leads up to the church. Birmingham Road to the left, you know, no prizes for guessing where that leads. Blythe Road to the right leads down to the River Blythe. So, you know, they're not very imaginatively named streets, but everybody knows where they're leading. Where we started the tour at the other end of the high street was Coventry Road. Again, pretty descriptive. This isn't exactly like a bus stop, bus station, sort of an interchange, transport interchange, yeah. You know, and that's sort of going back centuries. It's pretty, you know, we don't really think of those kind of things existing, but you know, people needed to get around. They needed to make arrangements for those kinds of things, and that's indeed what they did. And it is looking a little bit, look at these, some quite grey clouds on this lot here, but that's okay. Still pretty warm at the moment. A lot cooler when the sun goes in, mind you. Well, if it rains later or in the night, that's good. It saves me watering the garden. I'm all for that. Anything that saves me a job. There's another one of these lovely Georgian houses. Look, they're beautiful. You really get a look at the wealth of the town. What do you think? People, they probably paid some consultants a lot of money to come up with those names, didn't they? Yeah, lovely building with timber framing infilled with brick. Brick quite common around here, earlier than it was in many other places, because there were huge brickworks close to here towards Tamworth. There were big clay deposits, and bricks became sort of a widely used building material, an affordable material quite early, and then spread more to other areas. You know, people built out of local materials, but this part of Warwickshire is really known for being having some of the earliest widespread use of brick. Andy, you must have bought a house in a place called Cow Roast. Oh, that's cool. I don't know if you wouldn't want to live there if you're a vegetarian, I suppose, but Little Australia Estate, wow. Oh, the street that we live on, it is off a road called Brackenfield Road. And let me tell you, when we first bought the house, we used to get a lot of bracken growing in the garden. So it was aptly named. I would go out and try and get rid of it, but yeah, but it was aptly named. So quite a modern post box, Elizabeth II post box, but nice poppies on the top, commemorating 80 years since the end of the Second World War in Europe just recently. So a lovely post box topper there. And the area around the River Cole here, there is sort of a lot of some parkland and a lot of like nature reserves. It's part of a very important green space, and it's part of the green belt around Birmingham. So the area where there's not supposed to be a lot of development, although successive governments have allowed more and more encroachment, but The greenbelt land here is very important, and it's the Coal and Tame Valley wetlands area is a really important wetland habitat in the centre of England for plants, for all kinds of different animals, birds, and so on. And that's sort of the Coal Valley here is part of the wetland area. So the River Cole flows through Birmingham. It's not that long altogether, but it flows through Birmingham. It is joined by the River Ray, which flows right through the centre of Birmingham, and then together that water flows up here, joins the River Tame, and then onto the Trent, to the Humber estuary, to the North Sea. And there's been a bridge and a crossing point here for absolutely centuries, probably millennia. You know, this has been a route through the area. Most of the roads that were created in medieval times or later follow more ancient trackways, and we've got a crossing point here where the medieval stone bridge was replaced with a brick one, was extended, widened and strengthened for modern traffic. But this is the River Cole, looking very clear. We've got lots of ducks, got all our ducks in a row today. And it's this lovely wetland area. So the River Cole flows through here. So lovely spot this is, and nice walks along the River Cole here. You can walk that direction beyond the bridge, walk along towards where it joins the River Blythe, and then round to the Tame. There's a lot of lovely nature reserves and spaces in the area, and it is with this lovely view. We've got lovely willow trees and sun shining on the water. That's absolutely perfect. So, you see, that's why they have to strengthen it. We get buses going over these days. So I hope you've enjoyed this community-funded tour here in Coleshill. As I said, we've seen the hill, we've seen the Cole. I'm going to get off the bridge because it's not that wide, and there's, you know, if people want to come and walk along it, people coming along here, it's not fair to block them off. So I'll go just onto the grass here. I'll get off the little pedestrian bridge there, and again say a huge thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you again to everyone who contributed to this fund to make this tour possible. We do have a couple of other community funded tours currently running, so if you have enjoyed this and you do want to support, then please go to that page, the wish list section of my Buy Me a Coffee page, and you can find the community tour funds there. And you know, whatever it is, every single pound or dollar that you can put in there, it helps get towards that total. And it's really nice when you know, we get a lot of people contributing, even the smaller amounts, and they all build up, and then we do the next tour of various different places. We've got a Cotswold run running at the moment. I'm going to put another one up in the next few days, I think. Got a couple of other interesting places to take you to. So head on over there if you are able to do so. And it has been an absolute pleasure to show you this lovely little place, Coleshill. It's one of those kind of surprising little places, unsuspecting place where if anyone said if I said to anyone local, I'm going to do a tour of Coleshill, and they'll be like, what? But one of the things I think is I always want to prove is that every little place has got some kind of fascinating history and people and stories, and you just have to look for them, and you find them, and it's great to not just concentrate on the famous places, to really sometimes get off the beaten track a little bit, and to see the kind of places where people look at you a bit stranger. You know, if you walk around the centre of Oxford or Bath or Stratford or somewhere like that filming a tour, people just think, oh, there's somebody filming a tour. You do it here, people look like, oh, what are they filming a tour here for? And I like that, because I think everywhere is worth showing off and worth sharing. So thank you to all of you for your support. Not got many tours coming up, because I'm coming to my really busiest time of the year with my overseas tours with school groups. But I am going to try and put in a couple of As Live tours. I've recorded a couple of new ones, places we've been before, but new tours of them. I've done one in Lincoln, and I've done a new one focusing on just on the docks in Liverpool. So at least one of those I'm hoping to put up very soon to do As Live for you. And I'm going to be re-releasing some old tours on YouTube that you can go in and take a look at in those weeks while I'm away, and I'll try to stay in touch as much as I can, and make sure you remember who I am until I can get back on the live tours again. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope to see you all very soon. Have a lovely weekend wherever you are and whatever you're doing, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you very much.